So vote for me, because I don't even want to go to college, and I don't care. And as president, I won't do anything. The only promise I will make is that, if elected, I will immediately dismantle the student government so that none of us will ever have to sit through one of these stupid assemblies again.
It's extras and epilogues. Open the theater. Lights, cameras, action. Movies and reviews. Things you might not know. What happens to your favorite characters? Let's get on with the show.
A high school history teacher meets his match and begins to spiral over an overachieving student politician. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the theater. It is now open. This is Extras and Epilogues, and tonight on the show, as we continue our march towards back-to-school celebration, we're talking about election here on the show. My name is Seanan Young. I'm going to be your host tonight. Significantly less whiskey than I thought I had. That could be good or bad. We'll see what happens. We'll see where it goes. And I'm not on this journey alone, of course. Hunter, tonight I want you to try to put yourself in the role of Matthew Broderick's character. To try to find inspiration there, you know?
It's so different from, the way I live my life. That
yes. But Hunter is an actor, and he knows what acting is. Thank you. Oh, by the way, that's Double H, Hunter Hendricks.
Oh, thanks.
It's really not necessary.
It's really not necessary. I'm going to use that as my go-to quote this week, because I was trying to think of something from the movie that I could just throw in there, and I don't.
Well,
other than to just go, who the fuck does she think she is?
Kitty. Oh my god, I'm letting my cat stay in here while I'm recording, and he just jumped behind my computer on the desk. That's not good. Oh my god. Well, I have a quote from the film that I'm saving that I'll tell you about. It's made its way into my favorite quotes of all time. There's a list of quotes. There's a list of quotes from films that I will forever love. Unfortunately, one of them is Kevin Spacey in Swimming with Sharks. He has a whole monologue that is one of my absolute Oh my god, just knocking things down.
All right. This is gonna go well.
Yeah. Well,
can I guess real quick? It's not we're not electing the fucking Pope here, Larry? Is it?
Come on down here. No, it's not. I'll tell you what.
Okay.
Really quick. Why don't you run us through the beginning of the thing for once?
I can do that.
I will get this goddamn cat out of my room. I'll be right back.
I can do that. Okay. So initially, we were going to review this movie about this time last year. We talked a lot about the book Best Movie Year Ever, and I am looking for the author of that because I want to plug him again. This guy did an incredible job. I read this book last year. When we first started this show, one of the first things that we did was cover a bunch of movies from 1999. It's Brian Raftery is the guy's name.
Right.
And that was the reason. Brian Raftery argues in his book Best Movie Year Ever that 1999 is the best year for films of all time in cinema history. That if you look at it from the beginning of the year, January 1st to December 30th, that the variety of releases, the variety of high quality movies that were released that year, even if they weren't all box office blockbusters, is better than any other year all taken together. And so this was among those movies. It was a crop.
It was a crop of films.
At that time last year it was right after we started the show. We did Evil Dead Rise for the very first episode, and then we moved right into this concept. So we covered Office Space, 10 Things I Hate About You, The Blair Witch Project, The Matrix. Actually, we ended up doing a month. I didn't realize until just now looking at it that, like we do now where we have these themed months, we did a month. And so this was one of the movies we were going to do for that, and it ended up getting kind of put on the shelf. Brought it back around for August this year because this fits the concept. Election came out on April 23rd, 1999. So again, it's right in and around that time. It was directed by Alexander Payne, who did a pretty great little movie with Jack Nicholson called About Schmidt from the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. Also directed Sideways. These are kind of his kinds of movies, these sort of dark comedies. Jim Taylor wrote the screenplay. I should have made a point to mention there that he was the writer for the screenplay only. And Alexander Payne and Jim Taylor have worked together on a lot of these projects. I think he also wrote About Schmidt and Sideways. But it's based on I hesitate to call it a novel. Tom Perrotta, I think, has since released it as a novel, but originally it was written as a novella, like a shorter form. Not quite short story, not quite novel, right in between.
Right.
It's been repackaged as a novel since. And what got me in a lot of ways about wanting to come back to this movie is he wrote a follow-up novel a couple of years ago called Tracy Flick Can't Win.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it is so good. I loved it. I still actually have not read the novelization, or well, it's not a novelization of this movie. It was a novel made into a film. But I've never read the original version of Election, which I don't think is called. No, it is called Election.
It's called Election.
I'm thinking of Fast Times at Ridgemont High change. But anyway, Tracy Flick Can't Win. If you've only seen the movie, also follows up on the same ideas, and it's very, very good.
Yeah.
Election stars Matthew Broderick, who is I've come to find one of my all-time favorites. I don't think I've ever seen Broderick in something I didn't like, except for maybe that '97 Godzilla.
And even
that,
okay.
I was going to say, I've only seen it once in theaters when I was 12, and it was 1997. So to be fair,
that was the first film I ever saw in theaters, other than Songs of the South, which we don't talk about. So it has a special place in my heart. I watched this at the store today, most of it, and I finished it at home.
Yeah.
And somebody that was at the store saw Matthew Broderick, and he asked a question that I didn't think a lot of people knew about. He said, "Is this before or after he killed those people?" And I thought, wow, I didn't think most people knew about that. You know, I thought that was kind of one of those, you gotta dig deep to find out about that type thing. So I was a little shocked.
Okay, well, I guess I don't know what we're talking about.
So in the 80s, Broderick was in Ireland, and he was driving. He crossed over to the other lane for reasons unknown and hit a car head-on, killing a 28-year-old and her mother. He ended up being charged with reckless driving, which was down from what they were originally going to charge him, and he had to pay a $175 fine. Yeah. So that's one of those dark things that, like, and clearly an accident.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Clearly an accident. Yeah. I mean, obviously he didn't kill anybody on purpose, but he didn't have to really suffer any consequences for it, and that always left a bad taste in some people's mouth. Especially,
that's wild.
Especially after in the 2000s, he was pegged for a Honda commercial at the Super Bowl, which the brother/son of the deceased found to be in poor taste because apparently he was supposed to meet with Broderick to make amends, and that meeting never happened. So yeah, that was supposed to happen in 2003, and then he did the commercial in 2012. Martin Doherty said the meeting had still not taken place, and Broderick, quote, wasn't the greatest choice of drivers knowing his past. Wow. Yeah, this is legitimately the first time I'm hearing about this. I did not know that. Wow.
Well, that sucks.
Yeah. Well, again, it maybe sours
art from artists, right?
Right. Well, plus he wasn't drunk. It's not like he had been boozed up or anything. This was clearly an accident. He was probably tired. He's in Ireland. It's not a familiar place. It was an accident. Accidents happen. Does it suck? Yeah. Absolutely, it sucks. And I'm sure he feels, I don't know the man personally. I'm not going to defend him because maybe he doesn't care. But I'd like to think that, someone would have to live with that with the rest of their lives. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Sorry, I didn't mean to drop that bomb on you right there.
No, these are the kinds of things that I
you learn on Extras and Epilogues.
I love to find these kinds of things. No, but that's kind of part of what we do here. Reese Witherspoon in a star-making role for her in this movie.
So fucking good.
I'll talk about it later, but the fucking facial acting in this movie is incredible, and she is maybe. I think she does even more of a masterclass of it than Broderick, than Tammy Metzler, the actress. What the hell's her name? I was just looking at
Jessica Campbell.
Jessica Campbell, thank you. She also does a great job. And Chris Klein, who the three of them, by the way, Jessica Campbell, not even mentioned here. She was kind of an unknown before this. And it was this and Freaks and Geeks, and those were her two big claims to fame. But Chris Klein, of course, did this and then went on to do a bunch of other teen movies.
Right. And they're all good in this.
Too, but that's kind of what he's known for.
They're also good in this. Also, don't leave out Molly Hagan, who starred in, of course, Herman's Head. As soon as I saw her, I said she was on Herman's Head.
I forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up because I knew she looked familiar and I could not remember why. And
she was one of the voices in his head. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. Sorry. Continue.
No, it's fine. It's okay. Movie runs for 103 minutes, so it's a little over the 90-minute mark. But this is also not a 90-minute romp comedy or anything like that.
Spoiler movie.
I mean, this is this is absolutely a movie that needs a little more room to breathe. This is a black comedy. This is in many ways one of the blackest of comedies, I think. And we'll talk about why in just a little bit, but yeah, so it's a little bit longer than that. Budget and box office. Now, I will tell you, I averaged out the budget here. I could not get a singular number on it. There were some sources saying it was as low as $8 million. Some sources saying it was as high as 25. And we don't usually get that kind of discrepancy. I have to assume one of them was the production budget. One of them included all the marketing. Sure. So I just put it down the middle and put it at 16 because it made 17. So if you look at it on paper, it's not a box office success. And one of the things that Brian Raftery, as I recall, it's been a year now, but talked about in that book is how this was very much not a cult classic in the way that a lot of movies are. It comes out in theaters, it doesn't hit for some reason, but it's kind of trashy and fun and people love it, so it becomes a cult classic. This is a rarity in that it's a very smart, very intelligent movie
this
that
is a critics
didn't hit
film.
at the box office. Yes, and then became a big deal after the fact when critics kept saying, no, even if you missed this in theaters, you need to go back and watch this movie.
Right.
It wasn't marketed properly. It was produced, or not produced, I don't think it was produced. It's distributed by MTV Films. MTV picked it up wanting to get into the kind of the teen comedy business, and not knowing what they had on their hands, marketed it like a teen comedy. If you go back and watch trailers for it, to even look at the poster, it's all a little wacky and a little funny, and they have enough scenes from the movie to show in a trailer to make you think this is an over-the-top 10 Things I Hate About You kind of movie, and it's not. It's not that at all.
No.
You're going to get a lot of comedy, but not in the way that you're thinking you would get from a movie like that. And like I said, the box office didn't show it, but the critical reception does. It's got a 92% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes for a 7.9 out of 10. Metacritic has a universal acclaim and 83 out of 100 overall. Cinema Score, again, this is where they usually differ. Audiences gave it a B- on an A/F scale. They liked it, but didn't love it, and probably, again, because they went in for one movie and didn't get that movie at all. I think a lot of audiences who did go to see this expected, again, a teen comedy sex romp, and it wasn't that. Roger Ebert gave it pretty high praise, 3.5 stars out of 4, saying, quote, what was astonishing about this film and probably damaged it at the box office was that director Alexander Payne didn't choose sides, but satirized both sides with a cheerful open-mindedness. He also made a point to talk about how, it's a movie that has 4 protagonists, none of whom are ever really right or wrong in the things that they do, or like consistently, and all kind of getting either what they deserve or what they need, even if it's not what they go for. It's a really, really interesting movie in that way.
And I will say that I went into this movie. This is the first time, from once Hunter and I pulled a switcheroo. This is one I had never seen. I'd always wanted to watch and never got to watch it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this is the first time I've seen the film. And everything that I remember about the film was that Reese Witherspoon's character, Tracy Flick, was a giant bitch and you will hate her. That's what I was always led to believe. And as I watched the film, I realized that maybe you are supposed to hate her, but in a lot of ways I identified with her as someone who was an overachiever and is still an overachiever in a lot of ways, to know the pain of like trying to be important and the disappointment when you're not. So I sympathize with her. Now, she is not, obviously, clearly not a quote unquote good person. I mean, she's not really a bad person either. She is very human. The character that I think I probably felt the worst for was the sister, Tammy Metzler. Because she is the one that, heartbroken, and then she went for revenge. She was the one that I kind of felt bad for until, as the movie progressed, I started to feel more and more bad for Reese Witherspoon's character, Tracy Flick. Because like you said, you messaged me and said, we've all know that person that's done nothing wrong, but you dislike him anyway. She was, God, I didn't expect a lot of the things that happened in this film. Even starting off, to find out that she was groomed and then sexually exploited by a teacher. Who, oh God, when he starts bawling and saying we're in love, I'm cringe. I balled up so tight. Like, stop. Please stop. It was awkward.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie directly precedes that, when you're seeing the love note that he wrote her and saying, "Come away with me," and all that. And if you don't look at the fingernails on the hands holding it, you think it's Tracy.
Right.
And then you realize it's their principal who lowers the note to look at this grown man sobbing in the chair across from his desk. And him saying, "Now, tell me, you didn't do anything inappropriate with this girl, did you?"
He just starts crying, and like, we were in love.
Phenomenal scene. Oh god! And you said it best. This movie is, in so many ways, a lot of the humor is just full body cringe.
Yep.
If you're a decent person, you cannot watch this movie and not just constantly go, "Oh God, what is happening?"
Yeah.
Oh, please make it stop.
Yes, it happened many, many times. And this film, in the same way that when I reviewed Bill and Ted last week, this is a comedy I never laughed, but not because I didn't find it funny. I think there's something wrong with me emotionally.
Well, okay.
I didn't laugh out loud, but I was never not entertained, and I found it super interesting and fascinating.
I did, but admittedly, this is, so like you said, we kind of flipped the script here. I probably didn't laugh out loud the first time I saw this movie. It's been a long time, because I remember watching it in college the first time. But I've seen this movie several times now. This is probably the fourth or fifth time that I've seen it. And knowing kind of what's coming and being able to kind of prep yourself. So you kind of start, once you know what to expect. For me, I kind of start giggling before it happens, and then the drop reveal. When McAllister opens the door at the high school and everyone's in the principal's office.
Oh my God. Again, I curled into myself.
When they come back to his face and he just has that stupid look on his face, it ruins me every time. The freeze frame of Tracy Flick's face the first time that McAllister goes into why he doesn't like her, and it's that horrible shot mid-move of her. Reese Witherspoon, if I read correctly, it's a bit of trivia I didn't write on there, fought against that shot originally. She hated it. She's like, "It makes me look so stupid. I don't understand the point." She saw it in the final cut and went, "Fuck, they were right." Like, that's so much funnier, because that's the way he pictures her. He wants to picture her doing something wrong.
So I think the scene that probably got me the closest to laughing out loud, even though, again, I thought the whole movie was, all right, again, I'm ruining my review. But I thought the whole movie was great from top to finish. But the scene that probably got me closest to just bursting out laughing was when he's having sex with his wife from behind, and he pictures his neighbor's head. But it's not in a sexy way. It's like cut and pasted on top of the back of her head. Yeah. But then it goes to Tracy, and she just goes, fuck me, come on, fuck me. I'm like, oh my God. I'm waiting for someone to walk in.
So awkward.
It's so awkward.
Yeah.
This movie was so awkward. And the things that I got from this film was, again, this is unlike any teen, quote unquote, comedy drama I've ever seen. It is very smart. It's very intelligent. It doesn't treat the audience like an idiot. It doesn't have any stupid moments that, are lowbrow to get you to laugh. This movie is so incredibly intelligent.
Every time that it engages in that sort of thing, it's done as a way to put the characters in their place. Tracy goes on some big rant, and then some kid just goes, "Eat me." Right. And everyone laughs. And it's just the exact same thing that she rails against all the time. Like, why is everyone around me so fucking stupid?
Yeah.
So the only time that you get those, it's not, I want the audience to treat this character like a joke. It's undercutting the seriousness of everything. It's the exact problem that she lives with.
But it's not a stupid thing. Like, no one shits themselves or eats dog shit, like in the American Pie films or anything like that. Like, it's none of the characters in this film are out of the realm of possibility of realism.
Right. Absolutely.
I know people like Tracy Flick. Again, in a lot of ways, I am Tracy Flick. I truly sympathize with her. And the quote that I said earlier, I'm going to tell you what it is now. It's at the end of the film, actually. And it will go into my Rolodex of quotes that I will forever live with. She says, "If you're going to be great, you've got to be lonely." And I went, holy shit. That reached me on so many levels.
Mr. Burns was telling you this a while ago. Family, friends, religion. These are the three demons you must slay if you wish to succeed in business.
You don't want to be stuck in some phony baloney church or synagogue. Yeah, no, I've always been a fan of Reese Witherspoon. I think she's a great actress. Yeah, I loved her in Cruel Intentions. I think Cruel Intentions was probably the first film I've ever seen her in. She's great in that. I've never seen Legally Blonde, but I've heard she's fantastic in that. And
it's very good. For what it is, absolutely.
this movie, her performance in this film is going to go down as one of my all-time favorite performances by an actor in a film. Yeah. Like, I loved her character that much. She is so good. Everybody in this film is good at what they do. The thing I didn't expect was to like Tracy Flick so much and hate Matthew Broderick's character so much. What a petty little bastard. Like, what a jerk. Like, not only does he try to sabotage her for no reason other than he doesn't like her, and his friend groomed her and exploited her sexually, but then he cheats on his wife with that friend's ex-wife, and she fucking turns him in immediately, which I love. I didn't expect that.
Right. Wow. And yet at the same time, and that's what I love about this movie, it's so hard to like or defend or really be mad at any of these characters for any extended period of time.
Except Chris Klein.
Because as much
he's the only innocent one completely. Yeah.
I fucking love Chris Klein's character in this movie. Well, I should say for those two, mainly those two characters, Tracy and McAllister, they're the ones who really kind of fit the bill of, like, at any given point in time, you totally sympathize with them, or you're like, what the fuck are you doing? You're so ridiculous. As ridiculous as it is that he does the things like you talked about, he cheats on his wife. I mean, let's just put it out there. That's what happens. And yet at the same time, when he calls the woman that he cheats with and says, why did you do that to me? There's a realization of, oh shit, that was two people. Two people made a choice there, and she did come on to him.
Right.
And so then when he comes home and sees that, it's like, yeah, but did you tell her the whole story? Did you tell her the part where that happened?
And that's another
You're making
scene.
it sound like I'm the one that's completely at fault, and it's just, it's incredible.
Yeah, when he walks in, and because he doesn't just walk in, like oh my God, he goes to her house.
Oh, yeah.
He goes to the motel. Like, he is so desperate for it. And then he sees his wife talking to her, and just the realization of, and there's no screaming, there's no big fight. It's literally him going, okay, and he walks out.
And he just nods.
Yeah.
The way that scene plays out when he first walks in, he's trying to play it cool. Of course, he's coming home late at night. That doesn't make any sense. And you kind of know this, but the movie assumes you know this. It doesn't tell you any of that. You get it all through the visuals. He comes in, he opens beer, he stands there, and then you hear the baby cry.
And he knows.
And at the same time, you know what's wrong. He knows what's wrong. There's no need for any dialogue. Like you said, he walks into the room, sees them, back and forth looks, and then the nod and the walk out. It's a fucking masterclass of a scene it's this concept of show don't tell. You can show me what's happening without having to have every character become exposition man and just throw it all out there. Yeah. It's so good.
I have my fair share.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I've seen my fair share of teen comedies. I was a teen once, believe it or not. You might not know it because every time everybody
How do you
else,
do, fellow kids?
Well, every time everyone in the cast talks about, oh, I did this when I was a teenager and we did that, and I'm like, I watched the nightly news and I voted in my first election when I was like 12. But I've seen, that's a true story. I've seen my fair share of teen comedies, and I've liked a lot of them. But none of them ever resonated with me. We talked about Can't Hardly Wait the other day. I love Can't Hardly Wait. That's a fun movie. I like that movie quite a bit. I was never a big fan of American Pie, but I didn't hate them. But this was the first teen quote unquote comedy that I ever really went, man, I really love this movie. And I think it's because it is an intelligent black comedy. And I think that's really where my headspace is at, especially as I get older, is I don't look for gross out humor or, over the top. I really appreciate a smart story with relatable characters and a legitimate sense of humor that speaks to me. In this film, I did that in spades.
I didn't put this in the trivia because I didn't want to color your opinion of it in case you looked at that before you watched it, other than just telling you that I liked it, which is kind of spoiled my own review too. This is Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama has said on record this is his favorite political movie.
Yeah.
Which I think is mind-blowing because it is a political movie, but
it's a high school political, right?
Right, it's a high school election. I mean, he even says, "Paul, we're not electing the fucking Pope here."
Yeah, I mean, Tammy gets in front.
Larry.
One of my favorite scenes is when Tammy gets in because she's running. For those who have watched it, I'll give you a reminder. She's running for the election only to get back at her brother's girlfriend, who was her girlfriend.
Right.
Because she fell in love and the other girl was just playing around and she was so hurt by it. And that actually broke my heart a little bit. I felt so bad for the character. Yeah. But she gets in front of the class and they kind of make fun of her at first. And then she's just like, I don't care. This is stupid. Vote for whoever you want. Don't vote for me. The only thing I'll do is if you vote for me, I promise to, disassemble dismantle the student bodies or whatever. To go to another stupid, thing like this, and then everyone just cheers for it. Like, I love that scene.
They love it.
It's an act of defiance, but it's a believable act of defiance, and you would see why these kids would like get behind her.
There's so much subtlety to this movie that I love. So I mentioned the bit here in the trivia about how Tracy makes that analogy early on about her campaign and Coca-Cola.
I realized it as soon as I saw it. Yep.
Coca-Cola is she says they're the top soda, company, but they still pay a lot for advertisements, and that's kind of what she's saying she needs to do, even though she's the front running candidate. 10 seconds later, Jim McAllister drives out. He's throwing things into the dumpster, including her signatures. What does he throw away? A Diet Pepsi. Now, for the rest of the movie, you're only ever going to see him with Pepsi or Pepsi products in hand if there's ever a logo displayed. Yep. But what I love about it that goes even deeper than that is that as his world kind of falls apart, as all of this shit happens in his marriage and his love life and also in his professional life, and he gets more and more irritated that, Tracy is getting everything that she wants and he feels like she doesn't deserve it, his health deteriorates too. Do you remember what the opening scene of the movie is?
Yeah,
him running around the track doing, working out, doing push-ups, taking a shower in the gym and all that. He eats a salad at dinner that night when he's at dinner with his wife at home. But as the movie goes on and things start to spiral and get worse, he starts making less and less healthy choices. So it's a Diet Pepsi he throws into the dumpster, but later on it's regular Pepsi. And he grabs a cupcake and shoves it in his face. At dinner, when the Metzlers come and see him and he's eating pie. He didn't finish his regular dishes, his entree and his salad. He set them aside. He's just eating pie. It's just, it's so much fun to watch little stuff like that. Once you've seen the movie a few times and you kind of know what to look for, and you just see it just slowly but surely falling apart. He throws what is either a big soda or a milkshake at the limousine at the end. I can never really tell based on the kind of spatter that comes from it, but I don't know. I just love the idea that not only does his world deteriorate, it also goes right into the way he takes care of himself. He just doesn't give a shit anymore. And it's a little subtlety that I love.
A lot of the characters, we talk about growth in films. Unfortunately, I don't think neither Tracy or McAllister grow.
No.
And at the end of the film, they're in the same spot they were at the beginning.
Yes. So here's what's so crazy about that. I kind of mentioned this in the trivia too, but it goes way deeper than that. So even though I haven't read the original novel, I know how it ends. And it is pretty similar to what happens in the movie, but the ending is pretty different. In the original novel, Jim does not move to New York and go through that whole thing where he starts working at the Natural History Museum. He leaves the school, he gets out of education completely, and he starts working at a car dealership in Omaha, like very close to where he had been teaching. Basically, it's like the big city, next to where he'd been teaching in a smaller town. He says it makes him happier. He's kind of disconnected from everybody in his old life, even though they're not that far away. And it's just nice to be out of that whole system, out of the rat race, etc. One day, a few months later, when the school year ends, sometime over the summer, Tracy shows up to buy a car because she's going to college that fall, of course. And they don't have this knockdown drag out. They don't have a see each other from across the way and don't know what's going on. She confronts him. She comes right up to him and says that she's there, basically, says hi, and sort of confesses to him as they have this weird, awkward kind of reconciliation that she's nervous about going to college and that she hates everything that happened. And he says he does too. They actually reconcile. He says he apologizes for sabotaging the election. He says, I don't know what came over me. I think you and I are kind of similar in that way. We have these kind of ambitious goals and we're ambitious people. Come to find out over the conversation that Tracy was president, but she got nothing done. Basically, everything that happens in the movie that happens to her at Georgetown, where she finds out everyone there is just a trust fund baby and she doesn't really enjoy it, happens to her in high school in the novel. She becomes president, but nothing changes because they only voted for her because she wanted it and nobody else did. So she can't get anything done because nobody wants to participate. She also doesn't make any new friends or make anything better. It's just a title that looks good on her transcript, which they mentioned earlier. As he tries to console her and give her some advice, she goes back to her old car, comes back with her yearbook, and kind of sheepishly is like, I know this is kind of dumb, but would you mind signing my yearbook now that we've kind of, made up? And he says, of course. And when he opens it, there's no other signatures. No one else has signed her yearbook. So it's kind of melancholy, but there's this moment of, again, reconciliation. They come together, they realize like we were awful to each other, both in our own kind of ways, and it's kind of messed up. So they filmed that ending. This is the important part. This isn't just the way the novel ended. They filmed that ending. They showed it to test audiences, and they fucking hated it.
Which blows my mind.
And the director said, "What do we?" Oh yeah, because that never happens that way, right? Usually, you have a dark ending that has to get softened. Fight Club has a famously much darker ending than the actual movie. The novel is much worse, but they wanted to make it this little message of hope in the last moment, so they're holding hands as the credit unions fall and all that. This time, audiences hated it. They went, "This is stupid. I don't want to see them get back to being friends." And the director went, "I got you." I think it's the only time in history that a movie has been reshot and re-edited at the end to make it more cynical, to make it so much darker and so much worse in the funniest way.
I'm so torn because on the one hand, like I fully expected to hate the ending because I already knew the original ending. I looked this up a long time ago, you know, because I have a lot of, when I have free time, I don't do things like go out or go on dates or anything like that. I read. So I knew this alternate ending and the original ending of the book, and I thought I would like that much more. When I finally watched the ending to the film today, I did like that ending because it again, it shows that sometimes people don't grow. Sometimes people are just petty for the rest of their lives. But at the same time, I feel that ending would have been more poignant and it would have been more, I don't know, I feel like it's a better bow on the film because realistically, you would hope that people would kind of go, look, we were both jerks, I'm sorry, and that's a good ending. Yeah. And the fact that test audiences hated it goes to show you that, like, I get it. I get why you have to change the ending on something because you want to sell it.
Sure.
Look at Mass Effect. Look at The Inquest presents Mass Effect. You know, if you want a good story about that, they famously changed the ending because the audience kind of hated it. Well, they didn't change it. Well, did they change it? I forget.
The three choices are still there, but they tacked on DLC called The Citadel that makes it a little easier to stomach. They also gave you a little more insight into what happens with each of those choices, so they didn't quite feel as samey. Because basically, the original problem was all three of the endings kind of felt the same. No matter what you did, it felt like a lot of the choices you made didn't matter. And that was the whole selling point of Mass Effect, was that everything you do matters. Everything is going to affect the galaxy in some way. So the Citadel DLC was basically, you know, at the end of a Fallout game when you get that kind of slideshow of here's what happened to all the factions you interacted with afterward. It was that, but you got to play through it. You walked through the Citadel, you interacted with characters, and you learned what happened to various people and races and et cetera that you encountered.
I think there's something to be said about artistic vision. And I know as a writer myself, past tense, and I know you as a writer and a creative person, we would both probably say I would never sell out my vision for, you know, corporate profitability or test audiences and stuff like that. But I get it. I get why you would have to do that. This is, unfortunately, this world isn't fair. And as much as we like to talk about movies that, you know, touch us in a very unique way, or they're special films with perfect cast, perfect ending, all that stuff. It's all in the attempt to sell tickets. Every movie wants to make money. So
and I don't know that Tom Perrotta, the author of the book, has ever commented on whether, you know, Stephen King famously really liked the way that The Shining and he hated The Shining originally. Yeah. He's come around on it. But The Mist, for example, he loved the way the film version of The Mist, which again is a much darker version. But they didn't film the original. The original intent with that film was always to end it that way, and he said it's a better ending, even though it's darker, even though it's more violent. I don't know that Tom Perrotta has ever said if he has a preference or if he's ever commented on the film version, like specifically versus his. I think, having read Tracy Flick Can't Win, I think the novel ending is important for that. If all you know of these stories are the books, I think it's better that she does kind of have that bow and that little button on the two of them, you know, kind of reconciled and things are okay, et cetera, et cetera. But I got to give the ending to the film version. I like it better, and maybe not just because, admittedly, again, I haven't read word for word what happens in the book. I've read a summary of it, and that's it. I still haven't gotten a chance to read the book itself. Maybe I'd like it more if that were the case. But I think the film ending, I think it does a better job of keeping the theme of the story. Which my takeaway always has been that the whole theme of this story is all about, or not theme, I should say, the topics, the main topics of this movie, and you can create a theme from them, are about deserving things, like what we get and what we deserve and what that looks like. How it parses out for different people, how much we put on what we deserve versus what we've done to get to that point. And I think the ending that's filmed does a much better job of that, because you can hear Jim convincing himself, my new life is better than my old one.
Yeah, I feel sorry for her.
Yeah, exactly. I feel sorry for her because I'm the one who, I got a clean break from things that weren't working. I live in the best city in the world. I'm meeting new people. I'm learning new things.
But he gets progressively angrier as he's saying it.
Especially the moment that he sees her, it all comes back. He never got away from any of that.
Right.
None of that ever happened. He goes right back to his job. And again, the cycle begins anew with another little kid who throws her hand up and he doesn't want to call on her. Which is a great little, just bring it all the way back, but the same thing they did with the janitor, right? He throws the food on the floor and it comes back to bite him in the ass. But there are other characters that exemplify that too. I mean, Tracy clearly thinks that she deserves the world because she put in the work. She did the hard work. She is in all these extracurriculars. She's super smart and she's worked to get to that point. The world doesn't work on deserves, unfortunately.
Nope.
And I say unfortunately to a certain degree because we would love for that to be the case in some cases. But sometimes, even if someone has put in the work and quote unquote deserves it, that doesn't mean that they're the best person to carry it forward, whatever it is that they're trying to achieve.
We talk about that in wrestling all the time. The guys that grabbed the brass ring and they did the best that they could, but just being the best wrestler, just working the hardest doesn't always equal you're in the main event. That's unfortunately
right.
If hard work,
you get to carry the belt.
Right. People always say that. They always say that, life is about putting in the work and earning it and all that stuff, but it doesn't always work out that way. And even when you get what you want, sometimes what you wanted doesn't turn out to be what you really wanted in the end, and that's exactly what happens so many times at the end of this movie. It's not just that Tracy eventually does get to be president and turns out it's not all it's cracked up to be, but Jim finally gets what he wants before that, right? He makes sure that she doesn't get to be president, and you get to watch him in real time realize, oh shit, I just essentially crushed a little girl's dream, a high school girl's dream, over pettiness, something that has nothing to do with me. And I've ruined her life. For what? Not her life, really. I mean, honestly, because, of course, that's the other thing is Tracy thinks that she deserves it. And realistically, being president doesn't matter that much. No, but
it matters to her in that moment.
I think it's such a good character study of someone that, with Tracy, I know a lot of people will probably pick up on the little nuances, but through the whole film, I was picking up on the stuff about her dad not being there. The fact that she was groomed. You could say that maybe she was leading him on, but we're talking about a girl in fucking high school. She's a junior in high school.
Irrelevant.
Exactly. She's being groomed by this teacher. And the scene that really sealed it for me of, oh my God, I actually do feel sympathy for this character, is after she loses and she's bawling her eyes out because it meant so much to her.
Sobbing.
And her mom, on her way out, has the audacity to say, maybe it's because you didn't put enough flyers up. Or maybe you should have listened to me about your speech. We'll figure it out. Yeah. And you realize what a horrible life she probably does have and how succeeding is everything to her because it's an escape from this kind of awful existence she kind of has in real life. That's when I really went, oh my God, I feel legitimate sympathy for this character. I get she's not likable. I get she's kind of a quote unquote a bitch. But at the same time, like you said in that text, she really didn't do much. The only thing she really did wrong, I think you could say, objectively.
She tore down the posters.
She tore down the posters. Right? That's the one thing. Objectively.
That's yes.
And then the person that ends up happiest at the end of the film is Tammy. She goes to a Catholic girls' school, which is terrible, but she falls in love and is happy.
But here's the same thing. I feel like this doesn't get talked about enough at the end of this movie because I've looked at a ton of stuff about it because, again, spoiler alert, I'm going to give this movie a very high review. I've always liked this movie.
I probably won't, to be fair.
First time. Tammy seems very happy, right? But if you take this movie 5 minutes past where it ends,
right, it's probably a rehash of what happened to her before.
Exact same fucking mistakes that she made the first time.
Right.
When we start with this character at the beginning of this movie, she's laying on her bed with this other girl. She says she's in love. They're in love. They're kissing. The other girl's like, wait a minute. No,
I don't feel that way.
Stop. I don't feel this way. We're just playing around. They even show multiple times where she's like, don't put my picture up in your locker. That's weird. We're going to get caught. Because, of course, especially in the late 90s, being gay and being out was still kind of difficult for a lot of people.
Like it is now, yeah.
Yes. And so at the end of the movie, yes, okay, she gets to go to the Catholic school. She kind of pulled off her little master plot of getting kicked out of her old school. And sure, she kind of falls in love with this girl and everything seems happy and great. But there's a reason that scene goes on just long enough to be a little uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. Well,
like, I feel like it's such a great directing move that scene keeps going on. They repeat the exact same shots of her and this new girl swinging on the swings together. It's you can see what's going to happen. The unspoken part of 5 minutes later, this girl's going to be like, I don't know that I'm into girls.
Well, she even says,
right back where we started.
She even says at the end, we're something like, we'll never ever be apart or something. It's so over the top. You could tell there's something bad's going to happen. Chris Klein's character, the fact that the girl that he, Lisa ends up going after his football friend. His buddy. Now. Yeah. Like,
she doesn't need him anymore.
I feel like she's probably the most dislikable character in the film. Because
absolutely,
like, she didn't just break the girl's heart; she like started blowing her brother for revenge. Yep. Like, she is the worst character.
Although, and I don't want to keep tilting the scales too much in any given direction, but just like every other character in this story really has like a kind of an up and a down. At the same time, these are teenage girls,
kids,
right?
Yeah, they're kids.
She just got out of essentially a lesbian relationship that she wasn't sure if she was all that into, and she got out of it because she was conflicted. She felt like it wasn't right. So somebody in that position automatically trying to reinforce that they're absolutely not gay is really not that out of the question.
It also,
especially with someone like the older brother, it feels like a revenge move, right? I'm going to get back at her for making me feel this way.
Yeah, and that was very petty. And the fact that she says, I'm not like you, I'm not a
dyke.
Yeah. Which
I mean, that's the word.
It hurt.
That's what she says.
It hurt. It hurt a little bit. Yes. I can feel the pain of these characters.
She says it in a vengeful way.
And that's what's great about this film is that, like, all of the characters, you feel something for them. Oh, one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite genre, it is my favorite genre, is horror. And a big problem in horror, especially when you deal with teenage horror, is you don't grow to like the characters. The characters are either unlikable or they're so paint by numbers you never feel anything for them. This film, you feel something for almost everybody. I felt either sympathy or scorn for pretty much everybody top to bottom. Even characters that aren't in it very much, like the principal who's he wants to expel Tammy because she dared to, cause a ruckus.
Interfere with his, by the way, you mean, he's a doctor, but you mean Principal Hendricks? Which is always weird to me.
All right. Let's get to the review. Let's jump into the review here. I will go first, as is often the case. I never saw this movie. I had a passing interest in it when I was younger. I had a crush on Reese Witherspoon, so of course, who didn't? Back in the day. After watching it, and honestly being a little hesitant to watch it, only because this isn't my normal kind of film. My genre is horror. When we review horror films, I'm always happier, even if the reviews don't always go well, because at least I get to watch a scary movie and there's blood and there's monsters. So I kind of went into this, but at the same time, I like to consider myself a legitimate journalist and a film reviewer. So I went into this with an open mind, and surprisingly, even to myself, this ended up being one of my favorite films that I've ever watched. So in the same way that I think Hunter with Rocky and with White Man Can't Jump, you found two films that you didn't, had never seen and ended up loving. I felt that way about this film. I put it on at the store expecting it to be in the background while I just kind of did stuff. I couldn't take my eyes off the screen the entire time. I was so enamored with Reese Witherspoon's performance as Tracy, and I thought that would be the end of it. But then I really liked Chris Klein. I really liked Jessica Campbell as Tammy. I really liked so many of these characters, and I wanted to know what happened to them. I wanted to know what was going to happen to them. I felt an incredible amount of sympathy for most of the characters, and the fact that I actually felt something for the characters really speaks a lot to me. I think I don't want to say this is a hidden gem, because I think everyone knows that this film is highly regarded. Maybe you haven't seen it, but it's not like no one's heard of this film. And
it took time.
It took time.
It wasn't like that in the moment. It took time to get to that point. Yeah.
It's intelligent. If it's not laugh out loud funny, it's always entertaining funny. Like, there will never be a moment where the comedy doesn't land with you. You might just not laugh out loud like me, because I generally don't laugh out loud. I'm a very stone-faced person for the most part. But I love the characters. I love the story. it is such a good movie on so many levels. I can't recommend it enough. I think Roger Ebert, as usually is the case, is right on the money with this. This has become one of my favorite films that we've watched on the show, and it will go down as one of my favorite films that I'll probably watch in the future. I think Reese Witherspoon's performance is just amazing. She's so good in this, both as someone you dislike and as someone you sympathize with. Her reaction to winning when she's hopping up and down to the hallway. She's 20-something years old when they filmed this film, but I believe she was a teenager.
I think.
She embodies it so well. Yeah. She's so good. Everyone in this movie is good, top to bottom. I hesitate to ever say there's a perfect film, because there's always something you can do better. But this is as close to a perfect film as I think I've ever watched. I loved this movie top to bottom. This getting 2 gigantic thumbs up from me.
Yes, hell yeah, I'd love to hear it.
I wanted to hurt you, and I couldn't.
I know you did.
I couldn't.
I know you did. There is exactly one moment in the entire runtime of this movie that I think they missed. And when I say missed the mark, it's not bad, but they missed a really great opportunity. And it ever since I noticed it, I can't not notice it. It doesn't ruin it in any way, shape, or form, because this is like one of the only criticisms I can levy at this movie.
Okay.
To give you a spoiler of where this is going. When Tracy starts ripping down the posters, her poster is the first one. Like, she goes up to put her poster back, her banner. She goes to put the banner back up, and it falls. And she gets up on the trash can. She puts it up again. She falls with it, tears it, and then she goes insane. When she falls off the trash can and tears the banner down, they have her, if you're looking at the banner, at the top left corner. And the banner says, "Who cares? I do. Vote Flick." Or pick Flick. I really wish they had put her at the top right corner, because there's a missed opportunity for a 3-second shot where if she was trying to put that corner back up, she gets on the trash can, she goes to put it back up, she falls off, she tears it down. When she lands on the ground and is holding the shred to pieces, and she throws that little tantrum, that little hissy fit where she's just tearing up the pieces, a 3-second shot, if she had pulled off the right corner of her looking up the wall and just seeing the words, "Who cares?"
Who cares? Yeah.
It would have been and it would have been totally on brand for this movie, because so much of this movie does that kind of thing. Just the quick little shots of things that are going to be relevant at a later point in time. Other than that, I mean, you're talking about like something that I'm thinking about 30 years almost, right? After this movie's been made, 25 years. Other than that, Michael Cole in commentating for WWE often uses the phrase "no wasted motion," right? And this is, to me, a no wasted motion movie. There are no wasted shots, no wasted scenes. Everything moves at a perfect clip. You get just enough of every character without anybody overstaying their welcome. This is a movie that juggles 4 protagonists, because all 3 people in the presidential race and McAllister could be considered protagonists of this movie. Even if he and Flick are the main 2, the Metzlers are also hugely important.
They get to monologue. They have their own, they have their own thing.
Their little freeze frames. They go back into their own history. Exactly. And it's that intertwined history that makes it all worth it. The cinematography in this movie is beautiful for something that literally just worked around a working high school. They tried one. The principal read the script and said, "No way in hell you can't film this here." Then they tried another, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's not George Washington Carver. They renamed an existing high school. A lot of the students in the background, those are real students that they used as background actors. A lot of the noise you hear, there were real classes going on while they were filming these scenes in unused parts of the school. So it just adds to that level of authenticity. It just feels real. The sound design, the music is incredible. For being as subtle as it is, the sound cues, that sound they play every time that Tracy's about to go nuts on something. I can't think of the name of it. It's from a samurai film, but it could not fit better. When you see just that little twitch kick up in her eye and she's gone to go yell at somebody or do something. Since the moment that I watched it last year for sure, but even before that, has been a movie I've always held in really high regard. And oddly, it's not something when I think of like my favorite movies, Election doesn't race to front of mind. I mean, I just put together a new water bottle for the year, and if you can see this, and Shannon can, it's the same stuff I always put on it. It's Star Wars, it's Indiana Jones, it's Back to the Future, it's
the Ghostbusters,
it's Jurassic Park. Of course, it's going to be those kinds of things, because I kind of, my wheelhouse is 80s action comedy and that kind of thing. But a movie like this, if I had to take it out past the basics, the stuff that I really can watch without even looking at the screen and know what's going to happen, a movie like this is, this is the best example. This is the first time I almost didn't get a chance to watch the movie before we did the show, but I'd seen it so many times, I thought, oh, it won't be a big deal. I watched it just last year when we were going to do it then. Luckily, I had just enough time to pop it on, and I thought, even if I have to do some stuff while it's on, I couldn't. Just like you, even though I've seen this movie a bunch of times, I started messing with my phone a little bit to do some things, and 5 minutes in, I put it down, I put it on the charger, and I watched every moment of it the whole time it was on the screen. It's a hugely compelling movie. If you're even remotely interested in the way people work, not just politics or like high schools, but the way people work, I think I can't recommend it enough. And there's definitely enough cringy stuff and enough, cringe humor in the way that you're like, oh God, please make this thing stop. This thing that's happening stop. It's so uncomfortable to be around. And yet, like you said, it's the way real people would react in scenes like that. It just compelling is the best word for it. I can't not watch this movie when it's on. I can't give it a high enough rating. It's 2 thumbs up without question.
Yeah, I figured it would be going into this. I was kind of curious. I thought he might go 1 thumb because I don't know how much he loves it. But I ended up really loving this movie. And again, this is my kind of film in the sense that I love black comedies. I love intelligent films. Sure. Famously, I love Gremlins. I love Evil Dead Rise. Those are the kind of movies that I usually flock toward. And, not everybody agrees with me. But I went into this going, this is probably going to be a good movie. But I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. I kind of put it up there with another film I've talked about on the show, and I mentioned earlier in the show, Swimming with Sharks. Swimming with Sharks sure. with Kevin Spacey and Frank Whaley is another film that I watched randomly on probably like HBO in, the late 90s, early 2000s. And not my kind of film. But I remember loving it so much because it is an intelligent black comedy. And this reminds me a lot of that. And I hope we can review Swimming. I know Kevin Spacey, but,
Yeah, but, what are you going to do? It's not like we're giving him more money by watching the movie.
He's so good in the film. And it reminds me a lot of this, except take him out of a high school and put him in Hollywood. Because it's very much a Hollywood story about people being shitty. Both films are really good. And, I really like this one a lot. Well, now that we've drooled all over it, let's talk about the ending. So, Mr. McAllister is forced to resign after being caught rigging the election, which was one of my favorite things. The ending when he pulls up next to the kid and he rolls his window down and the kid just spits at his window. Yeah.
Larry, by the way, is obviously the next Tracy Flick. He's so fucking serious about this election. And again, it'll never not be funny to be hearing McAllister just lose and go, we're not elected the fucking Pope, Larry.
Yeah.
Just tell me the count.
Larry wasn't having that shit. Resulting in public humiliation, including his wife leaving him, which is true. Normally something will happen and it'll be like, oh, world news, and everybody realizes it or knows it, and it's not something you would take seriously. But this absolutely is one of those stories that would get picked up by CNN and Fox. It would be one of their little stories.
It's a weird little thing. It's not the kind of thing that happens regularly, and while it's not a big deal, it becomes a big deal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. McAllister then leaves Nebraska and fulfills his dream of moving to New York City to become a tour guide at the American Museum of Natural History. Meanwhile, Tracy attends Georgetown University, where she similarly isolates herself from her peers due to her work-centric nature and is dismayed that many of her classmates were admittedly primarily through connections. I feel that. On a visit to Washington, D.C., McAllister stops Tracy getting into spots her getting to a limousine with Congressman Mike Geiger, Republican representative from Nebraska. Infuriated that she will go through life as she did at Carver, he hurls a cup of soda at the limousine's back glass before fleeing. The film then ends with McAllister at the museum posing a question to a group of elementary school children, and an overeager little girl is the only one to respond. He ignores her. I still, the people talk about how much they, and Jesse, how much they hate Peggy Hill for being petty. I don't know if I've ever seen a pettier character than Matthew Broderick's character in this film. Yeah. Because he hates her for working hard and succeeding. And the fact that he doesn't want her to, like it says here, to quote unquote go through life as she did at Carver, where she worked really hard to get what she wanted, he gets angry at her.
To a quick point about that, because we didn't really elaborate on her, and I won't spend a ton of time on it, but I think the perspective you're supposed to get from him is that, but is she really working hard? Because as you and I both know, everyone else in that high school seems to be a slacker, loser, idiot.
Yeah, they
right.
didn't care.
They joke at her all the time. The best candidate that he can put up against her is a popular kid because that's the only thing that's going to matter. And then come to find out that doesn't work either. He needs a nihilist. He needs somebody who's going to shut the whole thing down. So I think McAllister's point of view is that the only reason she is succeeding in all this stuff, even though she is working hard and getting tons of signatures and all that, is that no one is opposing her. She's not really getting any opposition. And so the success isn't really success because nothing's happening. She's not actually having to overcome anything. And I'm not saying he's right, but I think that's his point we're meant to take away from him. Exactly. He looks at it and goes, why are you so proud of being class president when none of this shit matters?
Which is
petty.
He
can't stand the idea that means it is petty. Absolutely.
It's very petty.
But he can't stand the idea that this means something to her.
And I do love at the end when, because we've all been there where, maybe you've had a bad breakup and you try to convince yourself of, I'm better off this way. Oh, I'm so much better. And then
I feel sorry for them.
But the more you think about it, the more you realize you're full of shit. And then you end up throwing, a milkshake at the back of their car.
Right.
So for the epilogues part of this, I think if we were to break down the characters as I like to do, I think a lot of them will continue the course, and they will kind of keep going the way they're going. I think Matthew Broderick's character will just kind of be there. He will live his life there, a very normal life. I think Tracy Flick will go on to do great things, and maybe she'll succeed, maybe she won't. But I think she will continue to be the exact way she is. And I don't think there's anything that's going to get her away or stop her because she's that bullheaded. Chris Klein's character will probably go on to, work at a car dealership or something and
run the cement plant.
Yeah. Be profitable. He'll probably have a good life, but he'll never,
I have to look at the camera for this, or maybe he'll be dead.
And his sister,
I love that line. It's so out of nowhere.
I think his sister has the best chance of eventually straightening up and changing for the better. I don't think her romance is going to last. No. But I think eventually she will find, I think her and Chris Klein actually will both find peace in life. Whereas I think Tracy Glick and Mr. McAllister will not, or Tracy Glick. God damn it, Jiminy. You're in my head. Tracy Flick. Tracy and
why would you do that,
Mr. McCall? They'll never find peace. They will live their life angry and bitter as I do every day, and that's how we'll die. I relate to these characters so fucking much; it's scary. But if I had to pick something, and I want to get to your of what you want to see,
sure.
But I don't think we need to see any more of Matthew Broderick's character. I think his character is very static where he is right now. Yes. I want to see more Tracy Flick, and I think it's good that they followed up with her because she's clearly the most interesting character in the movie. She's the most, it's just a fascinating character study in general. So I would love to see more of her as she grows and kind of tackles life. I think you could even do that movie now with Reese Witherspoon. I would still like to see that film. And apparently they were filming, or at least they had the idea to film Tracy Flick Can't Win with Reese Witherspoon, and it's kind of in a limbo hell at this point, I assume. But that's what I got. That's what I got.
So I hate to come across like a cop-out, but I try my best not to do this. But this is one of those movies that ends on such a perfect note, I don't want to follow up. I don't want to, here's what happened to these characters later. I already got that. You already kind of get an epilogue for most of them and what's going to go on there. And I don't think doing any further version of that does it any service. What I will do, and this is also pretty rare, and I'm going to tell you up front, I'm about to spoil a book. So if you don't want to know what happens, if you're going to read Tracy Flick Can't Win at any point in time, I want you to jump right ahead. But I will kind of give you an idea of what happens in that book. And I think it was, you alluded to it, I think it was basically the best way, if you're going to follow up on any of these characters, to follow up on what happened. So 3, 2, 1. All right, we're talking about the book. Here's what I remember, because I read this late last year. It's been almost a year since I read it. This follows up from the novel, so it doesn't use the film ending, if I remember correctly, but it's still pretty similar. And Tracy only ever once kind of reflects on what happened to her in high school. She actually spends more time talking about Mr. Novotny, the guy that groomed her, than she does about Mr. McAllister. But we catch up with her years later in her life, and she is the assistant superintendent of a high school, somewhere away from where she lived, but relatively close. We find out that the superintendent position is opening up, that she wants to be considered for it, but that the board doesn't want to put her up for it because she's not well liked. Because, surprise, surprise, she's the hard-ass administrator that makes everybody do what they're supposed to do, and nobody likes her, so nobody wants her to be in charge of everything. The guy who is leaving that position, actually, I said it wrong, she's the assistant principal. The principal is leaving. And it's the superintendent who's telling her all this. Anyway, the guy who's leaving is a good old boy who kind of lets everybody do whatever they want to do. He's super well liked, but it's time for him to retire, and he's preparing. He's had a heart attack, if I remember correctly, and she got to take over for a period of time. They want to put in place instead somebody who will kind of follow that same tradition. And at the same time that this is happening, they're also trying to open up a high school Hall of Fame. Well, for that, they want to get back a guy who was a really well-known high school football player. This movie kind of this book kind of follows multiple protagonists the way that the movie does. Basically, she's constantly having to fight uphill about trying to get into this position. Again, she's not well liked because she's still overbearing and still an overachiever. We find out in time that the reason that she never went any further and why she's an assistant principal at a school instead of, a major hotshot lawyer or something is that her mom developed cancer and she left college to go home to take care of her. By the time that was all done and her mom had passed, she had been too far out of college to go back into the position she was trying to get into. So she had started working in the school district and eventually just got ingrained there. Toward the end of the book, as several other things kind of spiral and fall apart, her personal relationships become problematic. Basically, she gets the treatment that Matthew Broderick's character does in the movie, that Mr. McAllister does. She also gets like a final out of nowhere redeeming moment. There's a person who at a banquet toward the end of it, when they're dedicating the Hall of Fame, comes in and tries to shoot one of the people they're inducting into the school Hall of Fame, and she instinctively jumps in front of him and takes the bullet. She doesn't die, she's only injured, but of course she's hailed as a hero. She gets the position, and it's one of those, she got it, but not necessarily the way that she wanted it, and even she wrestles with did I get it on my merits, or did I get it because people feel sorry for me? Right. It's a really, really interesting twist of we're going to make the character who was the antagonist in, I guess, the best possible way or the most realistic possible way in the original story. Now the protagonist getting the original protagonist's treatment. I thought it was really good. It's not perfect, and I don't think it's as good as the original story, like a lot of sequels tend to be, but it was about the best follow-up you could hope for. And I think as an epilogue, if you're going to follow any of those characters, that's the one to do, and that's why. It's got to be Tracy. Like I said, she's definitely the most interesting character on there. Absolutely. Well, okay. Well, that was Election. A little bit surprised by by the reaction to it here tonight, but maybe I shouldn't be. I mean, I've also suggested films that you've loved. Yes. Yeah, you suggested White Men Can't Jump. I got a button for it. That's not true. What do we got up next week, though? I fucking loved it, and I would watch it again. Hold on, can I preview with the newest button to the list? Special treat do we have another one? We do have a new one. It's this one. Yes, my mother twitted my fucking temples. Why did it do that, though? Did you hear that? What? Oh, well, all I heard was this. Yes, my mother twitted my fucking temples. Why is it so distorted? Oh, it's not distorted on my end. Oh, yeah, I'm hearing it goes. Hang on. I'm going to see if it does it when I play it. Okay. Yes, my mother twitted my fucking temples. No, it's not fun. It sounds like a demonic voice. It's like, twitch it off. It's like, it's distorted in my head. I don't know what that is. Dalton, that's super weird. If Dalton is still listening to Extras and Epilogues, he's cracking up right now. He's losing his shit. Yes, he's dying. He's losing his shit because of Boogie. Yeah. So anyway, Back to School Month ends next week. It didn't even dawn on me until I got to looking at the list, and we were talking about Matthew Broderick, that we're also ending the month with Matthew Broderick because we're next week we're reviewing Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And that was 86, a year before he killed those people. Yes. Sorry. And many years before this movie. Withdrawn. It feels like a joke, and yet now I know it's real. Yeah. So yeah, as far as the movies that we picked to do for this month that we ended up deciding on the 4, it feels like the most appropriate to end the month on, right? Because it's all about not going to school. It's all about trying to get away from it and take a day off. So
right.
Ferris Bueller's Day Off next week. And then again, it is officially after that sequel September. You guys can still vote. Yes, thank you, Zane Lady. You can still vote at our Facebook page, facebook.com/Podzilla1985. I sent the list to Shannon the other day as to what our current votes are. By the way, I want you, if you go and do that, to vote for your top 4 movies, sequels that to movies that we have already reviewed on the show. And the whole list is there on the Facebook page. I will tell you right now, as of now, the current vote count, 7 people have added TMNT2 Secret of the Ooze there. So that's the current front runner. That's going to be one of the 4. T2 Judgment Day has 6 votes. It's the next closest. So those 2 are pretty much a lock at this point. Those are a shoe-in unless we get a bunch of new votes for something else out of nowhere. Rocky 2 has 4 votes, which I'm very excited about. That was one of the ones I really wanted to follow up on. And then a little bit of a surprise to me, but I'm interested. Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey has 4 votes. It's the next... Yeah, it's the next highest one. The only thing that comes close beyond that is the Lost World Jurassic Park has 3, which I thought was a little surprise over some of the other movies that were options. There are others that have 2 and 1 votes apiece, but
when you say
so right now
7 votes, it sounds so much less than it feels, because it feels like so many people responded.
Oh yeah, well, and again, all those people voted for they voted for 4 movies apiece. So TMNT2 getting a single vote from all of those options is pretty impressive that it got 7 across the board there. It's like almost everybody put that on their list.
So Joker 2 is coming out on when is Joker 2 coming out? It's soon, if I remember correctly.
I don't know. Probably. That sounds right.
All right, there it is. October 4th is when Joker 2 comes out. Starring Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, right? Next week, we're reviewing Ferris Bueller's Day Off, starring Matthew Broderick, obviously, and Mia Sara as his love interest. Mia Sara, who played the very first live-action Harley Quinn in
on Birds of Prey.
Birds of Prey, absolutely. So a little bit of
that was the WB show, right?
It was
way back when, or CW or something like that. Yeah.
A little bit of interest there. Just hey, it's X's and Epilogues, baby. That's what you do,
right?
All right. Well,
throwing some spicy in there.
Spicy. Well, the theater is closed for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow with an all new After Dark for myself and for Double H. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let us know. Continue to vote. Tell us what you want us to watch in September for sequel September. What do we have set up for October? I know we're doing horror films. Do we have an angle? Because I have an angle.
Well, it's not so much an angle, but we wrote down a series of things we still wanted to cover. One of them's got to be Ghostbusters 2, or the From Rope to Rope and Pillar to Post, the best of the best. Awesome Lane is going to throw our heads through the post. So because I didn't allow it on the sequel September list specifically because it was penciled in for October.
So we'll do Ghostbusters 2 for sure. But I think what we should do is we should call it like Shannon's October. He picks the horror films to watch because Lindsay got her own goddamn month. I think I deserve one.
That was your idea.
I browned out.
I'm here for it. I mean, just so you know, and so the listeners know, the things we had on the list of things we might want to cover included things like Scream, The Shining, Hereditary, The Faculty. I threw Abigail on there because at the time I hadn't seen it. I have since, and it's not great.
What if we did a film every month, every day?
No.
All right.
You can do that.
No,
I will not have that kind of time. I would love to fucking do that, but I do not have.
Yes, my mother twitted my fucking balls.
I wish I could hear what I'm hearing. Sounds like a demon coming through a telephone.
We'll pull Steven in here and see if he has it too. If it sounds the same. All right.
So weird.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow for After Dark. Hunter, take us out.
Oh, Mr. McAllister, somebody tore down my posters. It's not fair. Can I get an A? Can I get a recommendation? Can I? Fuck them.